What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another weekly outlook. So we're going to start off with pound yen over here. So let's just remove all the analysis, start with the monthly time frame. Let's just break down what we can clearly see what's happening at this stage. So from a monthly point of view, we're still very much in a bullish upside trend. Clearly see that a lot of the downside moves on the monthly candles are rejections. Okay, tapping into key areas, even here, and and we're seeing those downside wicks in the monthlies are the upside liquidity that's generated. So, for example, even here you can see downside move to potentially push further up. Same here at this stage. And then as well, when we tapped into this support area over here, we did the same thing. Now, obviously, we can clearly see that currently our main area and area of interest would be over here on the monthly, and then we've got this secondary area over here. So we can see at this stage, we're basically, once this candle closed below this area to the left-hand side, we can see that we're basically in this kind of tricky spot in the range, right? We can probably understand why that's happening. If we look to the left, we can see this is where we previously had range area from a monthly time frame. So I think for me, for further upside, we're going to want to see price back above these kind of previous levels. Let's just remove this for a sec. It's a bit more clear and neat. We're probably going to want to see, price being back above this kind of area here to the left, so probably 62 and above. So we can already start to sort of understand, okay, price is breaking. If we're getting lower time frame above 62 at that stage, then I think we can at least target around 65, roughly 66, and then potentially further on, then up to 170 later on. So we can already start to understand that we're looking for that. However, at the same time, if we fail to break 62 at that stage, then I think there could be opportunities once we start to see the relevant things on dailies and 4 hours, a change and shift in structure, then we could potentially target back down to the 58s. But that's kind of a max, because we can see that we're going to have a very, well, we could say a headache in here for downside, right? Because you can see clearly at this stage our current monthly candle got what, week and a half left of the month. We can see that we're rejecting this area, this previous area of interest. So for me, it's pretty obvious that we're going to need to be careful between here and here, but ultimately, potentially, between here and here, we could see opportunity, but we know our better opportunities are going to be for upside above this main areas. Okay, so that's really important. Let's go to the weeklies. Now, at this stage in the weekly time frame, we knew as price was coming down, it was going to be tough, right? Well, once we saw this candle close in here, we knew that the rejections come from this main area here the previous time. Now, you've got a candle closing at this stage over here, but until we see weeklies closing down below 55, then we'll not be continuing down to the left and filling this range and filling that monthly wick. If we do see weeklies coming down and closing below 55s, then I think at that stage we can look to target at least sort of 52s and 51. This area here, which has clearly created the upside move of our higher time frames. But we can also see as well now at this stage, the weekly candle that just went was all bullish. Okay. Now we've clearly rejected this main area, but at the same time, since this candle closure here, we've broke down below this other main weekly area, kind of, yeah, like we said, around the 61 62 area. So between 61 and 62, we're probably going to also have a hard time. As you can see, we can see multiple wick rejections in and around this 61 62 area. So we're probably going to have a lot of a tough time in there. But once we break out of 61 62, like I said, then we can at least look to push up to this main area in the weekly as a target 64 65, which is what we spoke about on the monthly time frame previous high level. So that's very interesting. At the same time, I mean, if we're going to see downside from this point, we'd probably see rejections of that area first and then look to fill the range back down. However, we're going to have we're going to need to see at that stage the whole monthly candle sort of reflip at that point, and then we'd look to drive down and potentially break 56, 55. But that seems a very tough thing to do at this stage. So we're gonna have to wait and see on that. But ultimately, we'd like to be looking for candles, to start to do something like this, start to push back up, and in this way, probably gonna see potential downside. If we start to see downside rejections at the beginning of the week, so for example, we push down maybe to around 58s, anywhere within this vicinity, even 56s, and we start to reject, and then we start to change again, like we said, structure on the 4-hour dailies, then I think it's sensible to look to target back up to 61, 62, and then we could see if we're going to break that, potentially then continue, like we mentioned, to 64 and 63, 163 and 64. All right, we've got our dailies now. So we can see our main area from the daily always stem back from when we had that downside move back to the 55, 54s, where we clearly rejected, okay, at this stage, and then we look to push up and we again change structure and saw upside move. So now that we're back at this kind of main area here, where we've clearly rejected at this stage, we would need to see a break of this daily range, daily candles closing outside of this area, and then we can look to say, okay, we can at least push up to the 64, 65. So I definitely think that that is going to be a good area to be targeting for upside. Okay, so from a plans perspective, we know that our better opportunities are going to come above this area now at this stage, because we know this is the fresh area where we spoke about on the higher time frames at 61, 62, which is the same area we discussed from a weekly standpoint, and it's the same area that we spoke about from a monthly standpoint. Okay, so now that we see that from a daily, we can already start to plan ahead and say that, okay, we want to be seeing daily candles closing outside of this range, and then we can look for pullbacks on the next day to respect 61 and 62, and then look to continue that move and look to fill the range up to around, we can see our main areas of potential rejection. We can see the price levels that we discuss, 64, 65. Okay, so already in your head, you can start to plan ahead. And this is what we were saying about rejections of 61, 62. If we reject the top of this main range and start to see daily candles starting to break down, okay, then maybe we can look for pullbacks on the next day to continue moves to fill this range. But we have to be very cautious, because until we're realistically below previous structure point, we're not going down again. We'll probably hold this level here and then continue back out of that range. So again, we can understand that we're going to need to see something below this area here as a minimum. But even then, we can still have, a lot of trouble, even if you're getting 4 hours closing below there, and then that one candle creates that wick on your dailies as such. So we have to be very careful. We have to use pullbacks, to look for opportunities. But ultimately, we're going to still be looking for upside. That's what we're planning to look for. 4 out at this stage, structurally at this current moment, yeah, we can see where our main resistance area comes from. Yes, we can see where our main support comes from. But in and of last week, we can clearly see our structural upside moves. So we're not going down, we're still moving in this manner. And until we can see what happens at this main area, we're not going to know pretty much whether this is going to be an area for rejection, okay, or we're going to need to see, potential candles closing up and outside, like we said, and then look to continue again with the same ideas, pullbacks, support to continue. Okay, so yeah, so that's obviously GJ, what we're looking at. I'm not going to do gold, we're just going to keep it short and sweet, just looking at GJ, focusing on pound yen for the minute. But obviously, this is clearly the way we need to be looking at our, at the markets. We need to be planning and in advance and just thinking about what makes sense. From a monthly perspective, this is where, okay, I can say from experience, past mistakes have been made, because we start to look at the daily and it's going to give you a very different picture. You're going to start to say, oh, well, we're rejecting the highs. We're now breaking supports. We're closing down. It sells. We're changing structure. Yeah, okay, yeah, we are. But what we need to understand is what our weeklies and our monthlies doing. Is this a change in uh structure and trend on the higher time frames, or is this just pullbacks and profit taking like we've seen in previous in previous times? For example, when we see things such as this, of course, there's going to be a change in structure from to the downside. However, realistically, are we going that way on the higher time frames yet? No, we're still doing this. So we have to bear that in mind on the way down, that, you know, once we start to see things like this on the weekly, okay, now we can probably say that at that stage we're going to be looking to rinse and repeat our correction moves back up to the upside. Every time we seem to have these new highs print on GJ, we pull back to key areas of demand and we look to retest those highs. And similarly, when we break highs, we form new highs, pull back and retest. And at that stage, again, pull back to key areas of interest where we can clearly see there's more buyer liquidity in the market. Okay, and I don't say that to sound technical, but it's a case of you can see where buyers are entering the market because the candles and rejections tell you. So you can start to identify, okay, clearly this was an area of support, which we call, when we talk about buy liquidity, that's really what we're talking about when we talk about support. This resistance is clearly what we're talking about when we can see not necessarily where sellers are jumping in, because it is kind of like that, but realistically, this is profit taking. This is where we see highs being printed and buyer liquidity is being drawn out from the market. So naturally, you get these pullback phases or these drops where price pulls back to a previous level of demand for more buyers to jump back in and then push back up to those highs. So we're still using the same ideas, same concepts, the rejection, failing to close below there. Same again here, we've faked out of this area again. We would now expect to see weeklies starting to give us some upside. But yeah, okay. So we're not going to go on for too much longer. I hope everyone enjoyed that. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to message me on Instagram or privately. This is going to be uploaded to YouTube, and obviously this is what we send out to the group members. So yeah, so that's all going to be available for both people. But yeah, have a good trading week. Take care, and I'll see you next week.